Welcome, welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and we are spending the time today discussing how to dispute inappropriate behaviors. So we look at behaviors, we look at relationships, we look at how we activate encounters within those relationships. We look at the belief system that drives how we act in a relationship, and then we have to deal with whatever those consequences are. But what if those consequences that are driven by our belief systems are giving us unfavorable results? What do you do in order to change the results that are driven by a belief system? Let's talk about the importance of an individual disputing his or her own beliefs. Where is the proof, number one, of the wholesomeness of the results that your actions are logical or that your actions are right? In other words, in disputing the consequences, a person must decide, where are the results? Where is the proof of where is the wholesomeness of what I am doing? Now, who is in the best position to dispute one's irrational beliefs? When was the last time you stood in front of a mirror, when you Skyped yourself, when you FaceTimed yourself, or when you text yourself about you? This is what disputing is about. It's not disputing with someone else your belief system, but you dispute with you. It's not about how somebody else feels or what somebody else believes. The argument has to take place if it's going to really be impacted long term. The argument must take place between you and you. The most effective change takes place from inside of oneself. It is your thoughts about your actions that produce your feelings in the results of your actions. These feelings will never change until your actions change. Your actions will never change until your beliefs change. Your beliefs will never change until you dispute them with yourself. So let's talk very specifically about how to dispute, how to Skype, how to FaceTime, how to text, how to email, how to dispute your own belief system in order to get a better result so that your relationships behaviorally can really produce the intended results, and that is to be healthy and wholesome. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse number 28, the first sector of that verse, the Apostle Paul says, "But let a man examine himself." This is not a suggestion. This is a command. This is something that is imperative. This is something that is absolutely necessary if events or behaviors are ever to change. So the command is, dispute it with yourself. Well, what does that really mean? Examination means to scrutinize for the worthiness, or to scrutinize it for the actual value that something possesses. So your disputation is going to be within yourself to determine, what value does this specific behavior, what value does this specific belief really have for me? What's the payoff of my actions that are driven by my beliefs? Examinations, scrutinizing, really calls for actions. Look at the book of Luke, chapter 15, verses 11 through 13. There's a story about a young man who activates a lifestyle of independence based upon a total persuasion inside himself, and it was not without consequences, good and not so good. Now, in verses 14 through 16 of Luke 15, the same young man was experiencing by this time a lot of negative feelings as a result of his activating events, which were due to his beliefs. Remember now, he started out at home with his family, and he decided to activate leaving home based on the belief that leaving was better than staying. This same young man, after he leaves, will experience consequences of his belief system to leave home. Some of the consequences were good. Some of the consequences were not so good. By the time you get to verse number 17 of Luke 15, the same young man begins to dispute with himself. You know why? The consequences are becoming too negative. And there's nobody for him to argue with except himself. It required coming from where he was to where he was. The text says he comes to himself. That simply means he has to move from where he is presently to where he was prior to leaving and determine within himself what is best for me. So his disputation within himself is going to be driven by some basic needs. His first basic need was to be belonged and loved. He wanted to belong to someone, and he wanted someone to belong to him. And he wanted love. That's why he left, looking for better belongings and looking for better love. Secondly, he had to dispute with his basic need being met in terms of he was hungry. Where could he get food? Could he get food where he is now, or could he get food from where he come from? His next basic need was that of prosperity. He says his father had things to spare in excess. So he had to dispute, do I have more than I had when I was home? Another basic need was pride and rebellion. He left home with a sense of pride and he rebelled. So now he's got to dispute with himself, did pride pay off? Did my rebellion pay off? So the disputation takes place from within the person. Now in Luke 15 verse 18, he makes a determination. I will arise and go. After disputation is completed, one must go to a different way of behaviors that are going to be energized by newly embraced beliefs that will result in more favorable consequences. So what you have is an individual who had to debate with himself, and he had to debate with himself very honestly about where he was. So when he comes to himself, he has to deal with where he comes from to where he is in order to go to a different place. Now, what are the effects of disputation with oneself? You're more at ease. You have a greater sense of the real value of who you are. There's an inner peace of knowing that you have done the homework and you have come to a firm conclusion. And then you leave knowing that your energy is directed toward what really matters. So when you dispute about your activating events, dispute your belief system. That's what you have in Luke chapter 15. There's no need of disputing the activating event. The activating event would not change until he challenged, why did I leave home? And that's where you get the list of the dynamics, is in the belief system. I hope that each individual will examine self so that your behaviors within relationships will always